Alrighty. Well, we have a lot of ground to cover today in this 102 level training. So let's get started. If I haven't had the chance to meet you yet, my name is Holly Conrad Smith. I am the Customer Success Manager here at Giraffe. And one of the best parts of my job is getting to teach everyone who comes into Giraffe how to use all of the different features and functions. We've been running Giraffe 101 for a while here, which is an intro overview to everything about Giraffe. And now we are going to start running these level 2 seminars that will dive into specific workflows in the product. So the focus today is on building a design library and a Proforma template specifically for a residential developer. So we're going to start out by designing a couple of building typologies, saving those into a template, and then also setting up all of our properties and assumptions in our usages and turning those into a Proforma in analytics. And the last thing we'll do is take a look at how to share all of that work that we did and how to reuse elements from that template in all of our projects going forward. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to unmute and ask them, or you can ask a question in the chat at any time. And with that, let's get started here. So my favorite thing to do when I am building a design library is to just kind of grab a random spot on the map just to save my project, because I'm not building an actual design project right now. I'm just going to build a couple of building typologies that I can then use again later on. So all I'm going to do is kind of try to find a piece of area that doesn't have a lot of default 3D buildings on it, just so that it's going to be easy for me to draw my building typologies here. So I'm just going to grab my draw boundary and quickly draw a boundary around this area. Does not matter because I'm not doing a real project, so I'm not being super neat about this. And then I'm just going to save this project. And I will always give it a name like design library or analytics template or something that will make it really easy for me to tell that this is something that is meant to be, reused over and over again on future projects. So now I'm just going to open up this project. And I'm going to kind of whip through these building designs, because the purpose of today's webinar is not teaching you how to design buildings. We're going to have another webinar, I believe, next month on the generative design and the flow builder. And in that webinar, we'll really dive deep into how to build all of these typologies that I'm going to show. But the purpose today is to just show that I can throw down a couple of different buildings with the intention of being able to use them over and over again. So let me just do that. The first one that I'm going to draw is a wrap style. So I'm just going to start with my USA car park and maybe make it 75 by 150 to start. And I am going to come in here to my car park and add some settings. So first of all, I want this to be multi-deck and maybe 4 levels. And then I'm going to add another output. And this way I'm going to offset this this outline so that I can build my apartment wrap around it. So I am going to just grab my edges here. And I want these to then offset a little bit, maybe 40 feet. And then I'm going to turn that line into an apartment. And when I add the apartment algorithm, it has a ton of outputs here. And all of these outputs are, all of our units and our cores and all of that. So I need to add all of these. Really quick and easy, I'm just going to whip through these and add all of these outputs and then assign usages to them. My corridor usage. And I'm going to delete the levels from in here because I'm going to control the number of levels in another location. So do not panic as I'm deleting the number of levels here. My 2-bedroom unit. My 1-bedroom unit. Studio. And my core. And the last output that I have here that's kind of fun is just the boundary. And this is going to let me do this as kind of a podium style where maybe the first level is like amenity space. So I'm just going to assign that the amenity usage and let that be. So what I want to do here is make sure that I get my correct outputs here and just save those changes. And I've almost got it. Something is not showing up here, so I'm just gonna our little output here. So I'm just gonna grab an apartment, chuck it on top, and be done with it for the purpose of this demo. Again, this training is not about using the flow builder. That will be the focus next month. So here I go. I've got my little building designed up here. And if I want to group this all together, I can just select it and group it. And now this is all considered one building, and it'll be really easy for me to move it around when I bring it into my next project. So that's the idea there. The next building typology that I'm just gonna chuck down here is a podium style. So we're gonna do, a really typical like 5/2 kind of podium. So there's a couple of ways to do that. One way is to just grab my usages, and I'm just gonna draw some retail, really simple down here. So maybe do 150 by 75. Get that nice 2-level retail podium. And I could just on top of this, grab my residential and just snap it to the edges there, bring it down to, 5 or 6 levels, and then I'm done. This does consider it all as one building, but it won't move as a unit. So something I do like to do sometimes is just do something a little bit sneaky and add a second output here and just make that residential. And now I have this building unit, and I want this to be on top. So I'll set my stack order. And now if I were to change the size of this building, everything is going to go along with it. So that's really useful there for doing something that is a little more parametric. The last building typology that I'm going to throw down here is like a garden style apartment. And I'm going to do that with just a line. So I'm going to draw a straight line here. And then I'm going to turn this into some sections and doing that using stroke dash. So my spacing here is going to be like 50. And then I'll add in between it, like 10 feet for my stairs. Cool. And now I will jump into my flow builder again. My strokes, I'm going to turn into apartments. And my start and end are going to be 0. And since this is garden style, I'm going to get rid of my, since it's garden style, I'm going to want to get rid of my, my studios. So I'm just going to set these as 0, and I'll just set my studios as 0%. my 3 beds is 0%, and maybe up the number of ones there. And you can already see what my output is starting to look like here. So I don't want any boundary on that, but I do want my 2 beds and my 1 beds and my corridor. Easy peasy. I'll grab my 2 bed usage, my 1 bed usage, and my corridor usage. And I'll make these all just 4 levels. And then I am also going to have my dashes turn into something. So I'm going to do a sneaky little offset line, maybe make that 10 feet and have it be a polygon output. I'm going to turn this into cores. So these are like, you know, a breezeway kind of style apartment where it has the, here, if I make these a little bit longer, where it has the stairs in between on the sort of exterior. And what's happening here is my apartment mix is not quite right to fill in all the way here. So maybe if I do like more of a 50-50, and it's because of my sort of 50-foot depth. So maybe I'll do 25 on either side, 25, get my 2s and my 3s. And maybe I need to adjust the length of my strokes. No, probably all of these things would be standards in your sort of pre-designed from your designer, and they're things that you're going to use over and over again. So you're probably not worrying too much about these lengths. You're copying them from some architect plans that you have already. But what's cool here is now we've got these 3 different typologies, and we can kind of go into now our assumptions about all of the usages that are within these typologies. So I have used quite a few different usages here. In the apartment mix, there are usages for each different type of apartment. So 1, 2, and 3 and studio, plus your core and corridor. There's a parking deck, and there is an amenity on the first floor. In this one, we have retail and residential. And in the last one, we have those same types of units. So if we pop into our usage editor, we can kind of see what is going on within those assumptions. And today, since we're focusing on a proforma, we're really going to hone in on the cost information that's stored inside of these. So right now I have my residential usage open, and I have scrolled down to the bottom where my costs are. Something to note, if you're in the US like I am, the cost stuff that is in Giraffe by default is kind of optimized to metric. So it's going to be an order of magnitude too high for your gross square footage for your hard cost and soft cost data. So, you know, residential, at least around where I am in Philly, could be somewhere from 260 to 300 per square foot. So I'm just going to adjust that down, and, you know, maybe my soft costs are going to be a little bit lower, like 25 per square foot. I'm not going to do any facade calculations, so I'm just going to delete that facade cost. But what I do want to make sure I put in on my residential and all of my units is my price for that unit. So these are going to be my rental prices per month. And I know in my area that my rental prices are going to be a little bit higher than this. We're probably looking more at like 1,800, 2,200, and we'll do 3,200 for a 3 bed. Just get those prices really up there. I'm going to save these changes, and I'm going to run through all of my other usages as well and make sure that those costs look correct to me. So my 1-bedroom unit, which is used in my apartments, I want to make sure that that price is also looking good. My as well as my hard costs, soft costs, facade costs, etc. So this again, I'm looking more at, 260 a square foot and more like 25. So I'll do that on each of these. And what's great about this is, right now, this is going to take me a little over an hour, probably. That is what we have scheduled for this webinar, to go through and edit all of these usages. But once you do it once, it's saved into your template, and then you use it over and over and over again. So you really should go through your main template that you're planning on using in Giraffe and fix all of your usages to match your company's assumptions, but you only have to do it once and then, update as those assumptions change. But this is not something that you have to do manually on every single project. It's something that you're doing once here as you go. So then my 3-bedroom unit, again, I'm putting all of these in. I don't need my sale price or my soft cost. My 3-bedroom unit, I was saying, was more like $3,200 a month. And then my studio unit, I was saying, yeah, it was about $950 a month. And then I'll do 220 for this. And I want to make sure that I do not forget my cores and my corridors and these hard costs as well. So I've got hard costs here for my cores, and my cores are my stairs, my elevators. So those things might be a little bit, pricier per square foot. So I'm going to just put 100 in there. And then my corridors, probably not as much. So maybe I'll keep that 50 there. And then the other usages that I have here are my car park and my amenity. So I definitely want to make sure that I go into those and adjust them as well. Something to note on these is, it's still going to have hard costs and soft costs, of course. Maybe this is a nicer amenity space, so it's going to have a higher cost, maybe a higher soft cost as well. The amenity is not going to have any rental value to it. It's just, going to be part of the building. But my car park might have a rental value associated with it. So what I might want to do is actually add a custom property here for the rent per parking space. And that's really easy to do. I can just click add new property, and I can just call that rent. Simple as that. And it pops up this new window where I can set the settings for this new rent property that I created. I can give it a minimum or maximum value. I can set the step. So the step is how much it goes up or down when I click these up and down arrows. So maybe I want it to go up and down by $50 every time I click those up and down arrows. And something else I like to do is giving it a prefix of dollars so that I know that this is going to be a currency that I am adding in here. So I'm just going to, actually get a little bit more specific here and call this car park rent just to differentiate. And I'll just save that. And now I have this new property here that is my car park rent, and I can set this to be, maybe it's $500 a month we're going to charge people for parking. Get right in there and go for it, right? The other one that we need to take a look at is our retail usage as well. So obviously we've got our hard cost and soft cost here. I'm going to do 250. and maybe 15 for soft cost. My numbers are a little bit random for the purposes of this, but we're looking at how to do the math more than what the actual numbers are. The other property that's here that's really useful is this net rent property. So this is going to be how much rent we're charging per square foot of this retail area. So right now it's set up to be per square meter, like I mentioned before. So I am just going to take that down to $25 a square foot per month. So that's what my assumption is. I'm doing everything as monthly so that it's easy for me in my calculations later. But you can obviously set this up however works best for you and your company. So what we just did is we whipped through all those usages. I pulled up every usage that I am considering important in my template. I made sure that all of the values in there were correct based on my company's assumptions. And I especially paid attention to my income and my cost information today. On a typical run through of my template, I would really home in on all of my efficiencies and any other custom properties I might want to add. But since today we're doing a sort of financial pro forma, high level, early on stage is the type that I'm building today, I really focused on those hard and soft costs and my rents. So I do, before I jump into analytics, want to just pause for a second and see if anyone has any questions about either part that I just showed, either, drawing up a few designs or setting the assumptions in your usages. If there's no questions, that's great. I'll just continue on. As a reminder, if you do have a question, feel free to unmute and interrupt me, or you can throw it in the meeting chat and I'll look at that periodically as well. All right. So now we're going to jump into the part of this webinar that I think is the most exciting. We are going to build our own custom analytics pro forma, starting completely from scratch. So you will see the entire process. You'll see how quick it really is. And what's awesome is once we have it, it's in our template and we'll just use it over and over and over again. So let's get started here. So I'm going to start with a blank slate. And the first thing that analytics asks you to do is to define a category. And a category in analytics is like, think of it like a header or a title that a group of calculations will go underneath. So oftentimes when I see folks pro formas, they have sort of areas in their Excel template where maybe they merged together a couple of rows, made it bold, gave it a title. This is a section of multiple calculations that go together. That's what you're building here. So the first category that I am going to build is my costs. So I'm going to call this costs, and I can give this any color I want. I think that cost maybe makes more sense if it's orange instead of green. We'll make the incomes green probably. And I'll just create that category. So far, nothing has really happened. But we do have now this tab, our default tab. It has that cost category on it. And I have this plus sign next to costs. That is where I'm going to add my first calculation. So I'm going to click on the plus sign, and it's going to pop up with this brand new window that has a lot of information. At first, it might seem overwhelming, but it's actually quite simple. So analytics and Giraffe, think about it as just Excel on a map. Everything that you draw has all of these assumptions assigned to it that you can then draw into analytics to build your own custom calculations. So I drew these buildings because I drew those buildings. They all have properties like their gross area and unit count and height and all of those things. So all of those physical properties are things that I can pull into analytics. And then I can calculate those physical properties against other types of assumptions that we input. For instance, those hard cost assumptions that we input on each of those usages. So the first the first analytic, the first measure that I'm going to create is just my hard costs. And I'm going to call this hard cost, really simple. My unit is currency. And now I'm going to set the components in this calculation, which is where I am telling Giraffe which assumptions and physical attributes of the model to pull into this calculation. So that first property that we want to pull in here is our gross area. I'm doing this in imperial because I'm an American. Of course, it can also be in metric if that's what you're looking at. I need to calculate my hard costs. I need to multiply the gross area times the hard cost. So I'm going to add another component to get that hard cost. And then I'm just going to search for it in my properties, pull it in here. And then all I have to do is then multiply these two together. So you can see that each component gets assigned a letter. That's how you build your formula. So I'm going to say A times B because it's gross area times hard cost. And that's going to give me my total result. You can kind of flip through this and spot check it to make sure everything makes sense by clicking here. And this will show you the calculation on each individual geometry in your project. So you can kind of spot check it and make sure, you know, nothing has a hard cost that's crazy. Nothing looks like it's calculating incorrectly. So it's really easy to check it that way. Now that I have this measure built, I can just save those changes. And it drops right in here into my costs category. The other costs that I'm going to create are a soft cost, a contingency, and a purchase price for the land. So I'm actually, for my soft cost, it's almost identical to the hard cost. So I'm just going to duplicate my hard cost, rename it soft cost. And instead of my hard cost data, I'm just going to pull in my soft cost here. Oops, make sure I get the correct one. I see that amount update, and I just save those changes. The third measure that I'm creating is my contingency. And my contingency, I'm actually going to just do it as a percentage of my total cost. So I'm going to make this currency again. But what I'm going to do here is pull in some of those measures that I already created. So I've got my hard costs that I already created, my soft costs that I already created. I'm going to add those together and then just multiply it by 10%. And that is my contingency. And then my last cost is my land cost, what I paid for this parcel. I am going to build this as a hard-coded number. This is just a fact. It's what I paid. It's just built into my Proforma. So I'm going to call this actually purchase price. Give that the unit of currency. And because this is hard-coded, I'm actually going to get rid of the components completely because this isn't pulling in any information about my model. I'm just going to type a number in here that is the flat number that I paid for this land. Let's say we paid 2 million. And see how it changes the operation to constant. That just means it's something that we manually input. It's not pulling from the model data. So now I have this whole cost category. I have my hard cost, soft cost, contingency, and purchase price. And the next section that I want to calculate is my potential incomes. The goal of this Proforma that I'm building today is to get to our stabilized return on cost and our terminal value. So we're building towards that by building our hard costs and now our incomes. So the next category that I'm going to create, I'm going to call it income. Just click create. I don't like this color it gave me, so I'm going to click in there and make it green like we said before. Just save that. And now I'm going to start doing the same thing again, where I just click plus and start building out this calculation. So the first calculation that I want to create is my potential apartment rent. So I am just going to call this apartment rent. The unit again is currency. And this one I'm going to build by doing the dwelling total price, which is pulling the sum of all of the rental values that we put in for all of those apartment types and summing them across the count of all of the apartments. And then all I need to do is multiply that by 12 to get my annual rental income. So I'll just save my value there. The next rent that we need is our parking rent. So if you remember my parking rent, I did as a property. I called it car park rent. And then I have my parking bay count as another property. And then again, this is just A times B times 12 to get my annual for that. Save that. And then the third one that I want to get as my rent is my retail rent. So again, this one is currency. The property that it's going to be based on is my net area, and then my net rent. And then this is just A times B times 12, because it's the net area times the net rent times 12 months in the year. So now I have my, my 3 different rental types, and perhaps I want to get a total of those. So I can add another measure here. I actually want to do, so this one, I'm actually going to rename this category to be gross income and save that. And then I'm going to do a new category that is my net income. And add a couple measures here that are also some constants. So the first one is going to be a vacancy rate. This is just going to be an assumption that I'm going to put in here, and I'm going to assume a 5% vacancy rate. So I'm just going to put in 0.05. It's not going to have a component. It's just going to be called vacancy rate, and it's something I hard coded in. The next one that I'm going to hard code in is just my expense rate. Again, this is going to be unitless. Maybe I'm going to say this is a 25% high expenses. Maybe it's a really fancy development. And then the next thing that I need to do is create what my actual net income is. So I'm going to call this net income. My unit is going to be currency now. And this one is going to be fancy. So first I'm going to take a subtotal of my currency in gross income. So that's going to add all 3 of these numbers together into one measure. And then I'm going to take my vacancy rate and my expense rate. And I need to do A, and it's minus A times B minus A times C. So do you see what I did there? I took my total gross income, and then I subtracted the difference from the vacancy rate and my difference from the expense rate. So I get my total here at the end. And now the last category that I'm going to do is my sort of terminal values. So create that. We're almost to the end here. The first part of calculating my terminal values is the cap rate. There are ways that you can calculate the cap rate, but often you know it. So I am just going to put that in as a constant. Again, I'm going to give myself a cap rate of 6. Actually, I want that to be a percent, so I'm going to do 0.06. The next value I'm going to calculate is my NOI. And my NOI is going to be my income divided by my expenses. So my net income divided by my A divided by A times B. My next value is going to be my return on cost. Again, unitless. And this one, again, I'm going to take my subtotal of currency and costs. And then I'm going to divide that by my NOI. A divided by B. And then the last one I'm going to do is my terminal value. We got there. So this one again is currency, and it is the subtotal. No, it's the measure of net income, and that is divided by my cap rate. So A divided by B. And you can see that all of these calculations were actually quite quick to put together. And now what's really cool about them is they are actually dynamic. So if I were to change the design of my project, my numbers are going to dynamically update to match that. And this is now part of the template. So the next part of this demonstration is I'm going to take this template that I built, start a whole new project, and you'll see that I have all of these numbers pre-built. And then when I drop in one of these design options that I've already created, I'm going to see in more of a realistic situation what these how these designs perform on perhaps a real project site. So before I continue, I do just want to open this up. If anyone has any questions about anything that I just did or anything that I built, feel free to stop me and ask a question. All right, sounds like we're good to go. So what I want to do before I go any further is turn this project into a template. So I saved it as a Giraffe project right now, and basically that just means it's a project in my workspace. Other people in my workspace can access it if I share it with them, but they can't use it as a template yet. So a really key thing to do before I go forward is to turn this into a template. So I'm going to go into my project settings, and I have this use as template button here. And I can, here we go. My zoom was incorrect there. So I can turn this into a template for myself or for this entire workspace. So if I click the checkbox here, what's going to happen is whenever anyone clicks new project in the top bar in their workspace going forward, they're going to see this design library as an option to create a new project from. So that's really cool. It's really quick to share. Everyone has access to it now. And you know, they get the benefit of all of that work you put in to build out that Proforma. What I'm going to do is just click use this template for a new project. And it's going to start me over here with everything that I just designed. And I'm going to sort of zoom around here and maybe find a more realistic place to test out some of these designs. So I'm going to jump over here to an area that I know there's a lot of development happening in Philadelphia. Went a little bit too far. Here, let me do Roxborough, Philadelphia. Jump over here. Now, Ridge Ave is really blowing up right now. Lots of new apartment buildings going in. So I kind of want to see what would happen if I were to drop in an apartment building in one of these more empty areas, maybe over here. So I'm going to draw a boundary. Click done. And if I look at analytics right now, all of my calculations are here, but nothing is populating yet. And that's great. That means I'm ready to go as soon as I import something. But I need to import something. And I want something that I pre-designed in my last project. So what I'm going to do is open up my design library and grab that as my source project for here. And now I can pull in these projects that I've already designed. And maybe this garden style apartment is something that might make sense here. So I'm going to drop some of these down, start rotating them to fit in my area here. And maybe I'll, you know, copy a few of these around. Build my little development here. And then I'm going to add some parking spaces. So that I can get some parking counts going, get these people some parking, and also maybe get some rent income from those parking spaces, as we talked about before. And as I'm building this, I am seeing all of these numbers populate, and I'm getting to, you know, my terminal values like we talked about before, without having to redo those calculations, without having to copy and paste any information about this project into Excel. It's just automatically calculating as I go. It's just there. I don't even really have to think about it. So that's, you know, it's kind of amazing when you think about the typical underwriting process where you have to go through all of this work of adjusting, you know, here's what my architect thinks will fit here. Here are the square footages that they gave me. Don't really know if the square footages they gave me are accurate because sometimes they're not. Here you're looking at all of that instantaneously as you make changes. Your Proforma is updating, and it's, you know, something we did here today in just about 45 minutes. So pretty fantastic use of your time to build out that design library and that analytics template. And, you know, just make sure that everyone on your team has everything that they need to be successful in Giraffe right from the get-go. So quickly to review, what we did today is we created a template project. We drew a few of our typical design typologies into that project. And then we took some time to make sure that all of our usages had the correct assumptions in them for our company and for our region. After we did that, we built out a Proforma in analytics. And then we used that template project to create a new study and pulled in some of that design library, reused it, reconfigured it, placed it around the site in maybe a more realistic design, and then used those analytics calculations that we built out, that Proforma, to analyze the design as we go. Something I didn't do is change the purchase price. That's probably important. You know, this site's a little bit smaller, maybe it costs a little bit less. So it's really easy to then go in and adjust those terminal values as you know, those constants that need to be updated to match the exact value. You just go in there and drop that in. So just want to make sure here at the end of the presentation that there is some time for questions. Even if you have any questions about anything else in Giraffe, feel free to unmute and ask. We do have a little bit of time left here, but thank you so much for joining us for the presentation today. And you know, I'm looking forward to hear how you go when you start building out your own Proforma. All right, if no one has any questions today, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you soon. This recording will get posted to our YouTube as soon as it's ready, so feel free to watch it back and pause and restart. And the next webinars will be in February. We have a Giraffe 101 the second week of February and another Giraffe 102 the third week of February. So looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks so much.